You hear that rain? Most folks find it soothing. They like the sound of it tapping on the roof, putting M to sleep. But not me. When I hear water running like that, ... I don't sleep. My hands start to shake. You boys look at a puddle and you just see wet boots. I look at water and I see the dark rising. I see the rats running past my boots, squealing because they knew before we did. You think you're brave? Try holding your breath when the ceiling is gone and the ocean is pouring in on top of you. Sit down. Put that phone away. Let me take you back to the spring of '65. When I was 22, I thought I was invincible. I thought I could outrun anything. I was wrong. Is the coffee hot? Could keep it black? Sugar is for people who haven't tasted the bitter end of a shovel. You look at my hands, boy. Yeah, look at them. Knuckles swollen, that blue tint under the skin that never scrubs out. That's the coal tattoo. You earn that. You don't buy that at the company store, you young ones. You go down there with your continuous miners, those big machines that chew up the rock face like it's soft bread. You sit in an air-conditioned cab. We didn't have cabs. We had our knees. We had pickaxes. And we had the man next to us. That was it. It's funny you asked about fear today. You asked me if I ever got scared. Scared ain't the right word. Scared is when you see a spider, but you feel down there 2 miles in, under 1,000,000 tons of slate. ... That's not fear. That's a cold realization of exactly how small you are. It was April. The rains had been heavy that year. The creeks were swollen, turning the dirt roads into soup. The old-timers, men with backs bent like question marks, they warned the foreman. They said the water table was high. They said the old number for Mentha, when they shut down back in the 30s, was sitting right above us, likely filled to the brim with 30 years of rainwater. But coal needs digging, and the company needs profit, so we went down. That was back in '65. When I was 22, I was strong then. I had a back made of iron, and I didn't know the meaning of the word quit. I was working the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was paired up with a kid named Danny. Danny was barely 18. He had this shock of red hair that looked orange under the cap lamp, and he was eager, too eager. He wanted to make money to buy a Ford Mustang. That's all he talked about. Silas, he'd say, I'm going to get that cherry red paint job. We were working Section 9, the furthest drift. It was a low coal seam. It means the ceiling was only about 36 inches high. You couldn't stand up. Couldn't even kneel properly. You spent the whole shift crawling on your belly or your side, dragging your tools with you. Imagine that, lying on your side for 8 hours, swinging a shovel in a space no bigger than the underside of your kitchen table. The dust was so thick you could chew it. It coated your teeth, your tongue. It got into the creases of your eyes. Danny was loading the shuttle car. I was setting the timber props, big oak logs we wedged between the floor and the roof, to keep the mountain from crushing us flat. It was hot that night. Not a dry heat, but a wet, heavy, suffocating heat. The air hung still. The ventilation fans were humming miles away, but down in Section 9 the air felt dead. I remember stopping to wipe the sweat off my forehead with a rag that was dirtier than my face. Danny was whistling. He was always whistling. Quiet down, Danny, I told him. My voice was sharp. I was 22, but I felt 50 that night. Ah, come on, Silas. He grinned, his teeth white against the black soot on his face. Just passing the time. 2 more hours and we see the sun. We see the rain, I corrected him. Listen, I turned my head. I turned off my cap lamp. That's something you young bloods never do. You hate the dark, but you have to embrace it to hear the mine. Pitch black. A darkness so heavy it presses against your eyeballs. And in that silence, I heard it. Drip, drip, drip. Not the usual seepage. This sounded different. Sounded like pressure. Sounded like a tea kettle starting to boil. A high-pitched hiss coming from the face of the coal wall. You hear that? I whispered. Danny stopped whistling. Hear what? The rats. No, the wall. It's hissing. I clicked my light back on. The beam cut through the dust and hit the coal face in front of us. It looked wet, sweating. But then I saw it. Little rivets of water were shooting out of the cracks in the coal, like little water pistols. The water wasn't clear. It was black. It smelled ... stale, like rotten eggs and old mud. That was the water from the old number for mine. Stagnant water. Dead water. My stomach dropped all the way to my boots. I grabbed Danny by the shoulder, hard. Drop the shovel, I said. What? Foreman will dock my pay if drop the damn shovel, Danny. We're moving now. We didn't wait for him to argue. scrambled backward on my hands and knees, crab walking as fast as I could down the low tunnel. I heard Danny scrambling behind me, confused, dragging his feet. Then the sound changed. It wasn't a hiss anymore. It was a groan. The mountain groaned, a deep tectonic grind that vibrated through the floor and into my bones. It felt like the earth was grinding its teeth. Boom. It wasn't an explosion of fire. It was an explosion of water. The wall behind us, the one we had just been working on, simply vanished. It blew out under the pressure of millions of gallons of water sitting in the mine above us. The sound was deafening. It sounded like a freight train screaming through a library. The wind hit us first, the air being pushed by the water. It knocked my helmet off. Then the spray hit, cold as ice, hitting my back like buckshot. "Run, Danny. Crawl. Move," I screamed, but I couldn't even hear my own voice. We were in a 36-inch crawl space. You can't run. You scramble. You tear the skin off your knees and elbows. Claw at the ground. I looked back for a split second. The beam of Danny's light was swinging wildly. Behind him, a wall of black sludge was rushing forward, floor to ceiling, churning with old timber, rocks, and equipment. It was a liquid monster, eating everything in the tunnel. "Silas," Danny screamed. It was a high, terrified sound that I still hear in my nightmares. I reached back. I grabbed his belt. I yanked him forward just as the water smashed into his boots. The cold was shocking. It instantly numbed everything it touched. We scrambled toward the intersection, where the ceiling got higher, maybe 5 feet. If we could make the intersection, we could stand up. We could run. The water was rising fast. It was at my waist, then my chest. And it wasn't just water. It was thick sludge. It pulled at your clothes. It tried to drag you down. We hit the intersection. I stood up, gasping, spitting out black water. The water was swirling around my thighs, freezing cold. The current was incredibly strong, pushing us toward the main shaft. But the main shaft was miles away. "Up the ramp," I yelled, "to the old air intake." There was an old incline, a steep slope that led up to a ventilation shaft that hadn't been used in years. It was our only chance to get above the water line. We fought the current. Danny stumbled. He went under, I didn't think. I plunged my hand into the black muck. I felt his collar. I pulled with everything I had. My back screamed. I hauled him up, sputtering, coughing up black bile. "Don't you die on me, boy. You don't get that Mustang if you're dead." I slapped his face, hard to shock him back to life. We clawed our way up the incline. The water was chasing us, rising inch by inch, lapping at our heels. We scrambled up the loose slate, slipping, sliding back, grabbing onto rotting timber posts. We made it to a small ledge, maybe 20 feet up the incline. The water stopped rising just a few feet below us. Swirled there, black and angry, full of debris. We were trapped. Below us, the entire mine was flooded. Above us, the ventilation shaft was blocked by a cave-in from years ago. We were in an air pocket, a bubble. And the silence returned. But now, it was worse. It was the silence of the tomb. We huddled there. My light was dead, lost in the scramble. Danny's light was flickering, dying yellow. "Silas," Danny whispered. He was shivering violently. "Hypothermia sets in fast when you're wet and underground." "Silas, are we going to die?" I looked at him. I was 22 years old. I was just a kid myself. But in the mines, you grow up the second the roof cracks. I put my arm around him. We huddled together for warmth. "No, Danny," I lied. "They know we're here. They're coming." "The pumps are starting. Can't you hear 'em?" There were no pumps, just the dripping. We sat in that dark for 2 days, 48 hours. No food, no water. You can't drink that mine water. It's poison. It's just the damp cold eating your bones. Danny started to hallucinate. He talked to his mother, talked about the color of the leather seats in his car. He asked me if I could see the angels. I kept talking to him. I told him every story I knew. I told him about fishing in the creek. I told him about the girl I wanted to marry, Sarah. I told him about the sunlight. I had to keep his mind here on Earth. "Stay with me, Danny. Focus on the heat. Think of the sun on your face." By the third morning, or what I guessed was morning, the air started to get bad. The water had pushed the bad air, the black damp, up toward us. Carbon dioxide? It makes you sleepy. It makes you feel heavy. I felt myself drifting. It would have been so easy to just close my eyes, to just let go. The darkness was warm now, inviting. Then I heard it thump, thump, thump. Not a rock falling, a rhythmic thumping. Metal on rock. I sat up. My head spun. "Danny," I croaked. My throat was like sandpaper. "Did Danny listen?" He didn't move. He was cold. I grabbed a loose rock. I found the steel pipe of the old airline running along the wall. I hit it. Clang, clang, clang. I waited. Thump, dot, 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 thump. They were drilling. They were drilling a rescue hole from the surface. They were looking for us. I hit that pipe until my hands bled. I hit it until I couldn't lift my arm. I screamed into the dark until my voice was gone. 6 hours later, a drill bit broke through the rock above us. A beam of sunlight, pure, blinding sunlight, shot down through the hole. It was only 4 inches wide, but it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Fresh air rushed in. Then came the voice distorted through the pipe. "Anyone down there?" I put my mouth to the hole. "Two," I wheezed. "We got to."
Silas and Danny?
Whoa, it took them another 12 hours to get the rescue capsule down a widened shaft. 12 hours of watching that beam of light move across the rock. When the basket came down, I put Danny in first. He was barely conscious. I strapped him in. "Go on, kid," I whispered. "Go get your Mustang." I watched him go up, and the basket came back for me. As I rose up through the shaft, leaving the dark behind, I broke through the surface. The air smelled sweet. It smelled like wet grass and diesel fuel and life. Men were cheering. Women were crying. I fell out of the basket onto the mud. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't work. I just lay there in the mud, letting the rain hit my face. It was the same rain that flooded us, but now it felt like a baptism. Silas leans forward, the rocking chair stops. Danny survived. He never went back down. He bought that Mustang, drove it to California, never saw him again. I don't blame him. But I went back. A month later, I was back in the pit. Why? Because it's what we do. It's who we are. But I was different after age 22. I never walked into a mine again without listening first. I never took the mountain for granted. You young bloods, you have your sensors and your escape pods. You think technology saves you. But when the lights go out and the battery dies and the water rises, all you have is your instinct. All you have is the brother next to you. Don't you ever ignore the small signs, the hiss in the wall, the rats running, the way the air tastes, the machine can fail, the mountain never lies. She tells you when she's coming for you. You just have to be quiet enough to hear her. Oh, pass me that tobacco. The rain is letting up. I've got ghosts to quiet down.